Good afternoon, students. Good afternoon, students.
Good afternoon, Tom.
Somebody hearing me?
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Because I'm in a situation that I don't have my regular device. When I ask somebody to share this slideshow that is on the Moodle site for week 3, so I've enabled the share screen option. So is somebody able to do that? I mean, I'm sure somebody's able, somebody willing to do it. Students, I'm waiting. We have 12 people plus me here. I am requesting that somebody in the class share the slideshow for week 3, which is on the Moodle side, because I'm unable to do so, given some hiccups I'm having technically. April, are you talking? Okay, so that Peter is unable to do it. Guys, there must be somebody. Somebody with a laptop or a desktop. Are we saying that there's nobody here without a laptop or a desktop? I find that actually hard to believe. Okay, thank you, Thorn. I would suggest that you put it in the screen share mode, so you can click edit, enable editing and press F5 or any other way you want to do to show the entire screen. Right. You haven't entered slideshow view. Oh yeah, it is now. All right. For some reason, people could keep coming in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start. Today we're looking, basically it's a part 2 of last week's lecture, where we looked at the role of information systems. Remember, we looked at various kinds of enterprise applications. So we're doing more of that. Next slide. So there are a number of objectives. I'm not going to go through the next slide. So enterprise systems is the first of 4 enterprise applications. Enterprise systems, otherwise known as enterprise resource planning systems, customer relationship management systems, supply chain management systems, and knowledge management systems. We're going to talk about these in turn today. So enterprise systems, I just said, has another name. It essentially is a software program that integrates the common functional areas of a business. People who have administrative issues at the end of the lecture class, this is lecture. This is being broadcast on YouTube. I cannot. At the end of the lecture, we can get into administrative issues. And by the way, most administrative issues are not usually a lecture issue. Is you go to your this administrative stuff for that in general. But let's go back to, I'll go there at the end. So, as I was saying, an enterprise system is essentially a software that integrates the core business functional areas, and it does it so that you can share data between these divisions. And remember last time we talked about business processes. The data found on your business process can be available for other business processes, and that tends to lead to better, greater efficiency and sometimes effectiveness of the organization. Next slide. So enterprise software is built around, it depends on the firm. So if it's a manufacturing company, it would include finance and accounting, human resources, manufacturing, and sales and marketing. Clearly, a firm that does not do manufacturing wouldn't have manufacturing as part of it. It may have a services section or a number of other units, but essentially, these are the key areas of a typical firm that either manufactures or resells goods. So you have a lot of business processes for each of these business processes, business functions, and the enterprise software is built to automate all of it. Next slide. So typically, the firm can either buy an existing enterprise system, since essentially many firms are similar, and then select the functions of the existing software suite that they want to use and map their existing business processes to what the software does, and then basically select the tables that and decide to configure it, customize it as needed. But sometimes that software needs more than just minor tweaking, and so they can rewrite some portions or actually change your business processes to match the software. Now, usually changing the business processes to match the software is not ideal. Clearly, usually it's either you're going to rewrite some of the software or change your business processes so it's more efficient. So it might be you need to change the business processes so that when it's automated, it will work better, but that's normally not in order to match what the software is doing. I mean, it's sometimes possible. So you can go to the next slide. So we have a picture here. Basically just shows in the enterprise system, you will, for all the functions together, have a centralized database. So for some things like a customer, this customer may be in data on the customer may be in finance, sales, and manufacturing. Not necessarily, depending. If it's, for example, if it's like an automobile company and they're manufacturing in a customized way for each client, it might actually be related to manufacturing. So it depends on the company. Typically, the customer is not going to be related to human resources, unless it is that you're linking, it's like a company that sells somebody directly to the customer. So think about the insurance company. Insurance company has agents and agents sell policies. So the customer is related directly in a database to the specific agent that sells the person. So it really depends on the company how each element is related. But when you have an enterprise system, you don't have different software programs that have repeated data. So it tends to be a whole lot more efficient when you want reports. Next slide. So let's see, what's the same, right? For enterprise systems, it has a lot of potential business value if chosen and implemented well. So it may increase operational efficiency if the business processes are standardized and coordinated across the organization. It can allow managers and possibly employees across the organization to have access to information that's across the firm to support decision-making that affects the company. So it tends to be evidence-based decision-making. Customers who have requests or complaints, there is the possibility of that being resolved quickly. And generally, with lots of real-world data, the company is able to improve its performance using analytical tools in all areas of this business. Next slide. So we're going to turn now to supply chain management, another one of the most important enterprise applications. So for those who don't remember, supply chain is just a term that means how we connect all of what is supplied to a business to the business. And so, and then in a longer way, you can actually say all the way down to the customer. So it's just a network of organizational processes procuring from the raw materials that gets transformed into products and distributing those products to the end user. So there's an upstream supply chain, which is the firm suppliers, those suppliers, and all the processes that is used for managing those relationships. And then the downstream is going from the firm or the organization to the people who are buying it, the clients, and all the processes responsible for that. And it's also important to note that in a large company, the internal supply chain is important because especially, in fact, even at one central campus, but especially have many locations, there is importance of sorting out how you manage things from one place to another. So think about Amazon.com, their internal supply chain, since they're the largest, Amazon.com is the largest retailer in the world, their internal supply chain must be something they must manage very carefully. And I need to mention, anybody in this class who has never heard of Amazon.com, please go and Google it. I went to a tutorial recently and somebody said that they had never heard of it. I was literally amazed. Guys, you need to be keeping up with what's happening in the world. Anyway, next slide. So Nike, that's the company that sells athletic wear and sneakers. And the word Nike actually means winner in Greek. They actually have several tiers of suppliers that brings the things from the people who make each part of it. Usually, most of Nike stuff is made in parts of Asia, and then it's distributed to a whole series of suppliers, and it comes to Nike, the company, who distributes it to a distributor, then to a retailer, then customers come into some store and buy it. So we have both the downstream and the upstream supply chain. Next slide. Yeah, just reminding people that in class, you really should come in with your picture, a photograph, and a full name coming into class. This is university. All the high school students and primary school students are required to show their picture. I mean, show their actual full, are required to show their live image. I think a university, full names and pictures should be minimal. I think that's just safe. All right, so supply chain management actually can lead to reducing inefficiencies in a company's operating costs, because if they carefully follow what is happening in the supply chain, you're neither going to overorder, if you're watching what is happening, the firm is not going to order before it is necessary. I mean, in the best case scenario, they'll go with a just-in-time strategy, which means that the firm only gets things exactly when they need it. But if that can be tricky, because if the just-in-time is not exactly in time, you could actually be having a problem where you actually have a few hours or a few days where you don't have anything. That's why many firms have a safety stock or buffer, that in case there's a problem with the supply chain, you have some stock in store. So typically, but once you had computerized supply chains, it basically reduced operating costs because there wasn't all this excess stock. There can be a problem with online supply chain, which is called the bullwhip effect. In the bullwhip effect, you have a situation where the demand is, the perceived demand is not as it really is. So for example, if you're to have a hurricane, the things that said a lot before a hurricane, like water, like canned food, in Jamaica, bread, I don't know what other things are. People buy a lot of those things. Maybe even candles and flashlights. Let's take flashlight producers. I don't think this would happen, but if flashlight producers see that there's an increase in flashlights, they may say, oh, we need to produce more flashlights. But if they were following that it was related to the increase in storms for this year, they would realize that it's not related to an overall increase in demand for flashlights, but it's really related to what's happening with storms. But so the point is, you actually have to look at what is happening. Next slide. This is going to show an example of this. So this is showing this the same basic idea that you, right. So you have the, I guess maybe I should just be admitting everybody. People are still coming into class. So you have the upstream and the downstream supply chain. And if the customer's demand is higher and it's not based on something that is sustainable, the data that goes up to the upstream will say, oh, let's do some orders. And it's not actually related to what's happening in terms of ongoing customer demand. And so there can be problems in terms of profitability, since if you order more than you need, then you're going to wrap up funds in goods that is not needed at that time, and that's going to reduce profitability. Next slide. So supply chain management software will model the existing supply chain. It is useful for planning demand, optimizing those plans, establishing what are optimal inventory levels, and what are good transportation modes between the wherever the goods are being supplied from to the distributor, all the way to the retailer, to the customer. And the planning systems, when people think about supply chain, if they're just being introduced, and normally think directly of the execution systems, but the planning systems is what makes supply chain management software lead to the operating costs being reduced. Because if you think about it, execution only works well if you plan properly. So if you plan based on data, then you will execute flow of products to distribution and warehouses in a way that's efficient and effective. Next slide. So for supply chain, they can be global, which leads to some issues. So you have to now think about geographical distances, time differences, people from different countries, which include performance standards are different, legal requirements which are different. So think about it for food that are packaged, that are sold in the US. Food must be labeled with the calories and sugar and whatever on the labels in Jamaica, all we need required is a ingredient list. So if somebody's manufacturing banana chips in Jamaica, they can either have two different packaging or just decide if they're going to manufacture they have one for the American market, one for the European market, one for the Jamaican market. You have to think through all of those things, and then even worse, if there are legal requirements, then those need to be considered. So it depends on the standards, which can be different in different countries. And then clearly the internet can help with these global complexities in terms of warehouse management, transportation management, logistics. All of those can be managed through, what's the word I want to use? Cloud computing. And another aspect of global supply chain is that if it's global, you may choose to outsource some aspects of the supply chain, not within the company. It may be cheaper to have outside firms do some parts. For example, you may decide that you don't want to be your food company, but you want to do any of the delivery yourself, and you have a partner that does the delivery to other people. Next slide. To the clients, to the customers. Next slide. That's a case that you can discuss in tutorial. Thor, next slide, please. Thorin, did we get disconnected? Yes. So with demand, with supply chain, we want to think about how demand of the customers affect the supply chain. There are two different models, push-based and pull-based. And the push-based model is the traditional one where you build the stock. So a manager would give the schedules of what is going to be ordered based on what has happened in the past. So those best guesses are based on past patterns. But the pull-based model, which is demand-driven, it's based on having a supply chain management system that can actually trigger the ordering of the goods based on actual customer orders. So that pull-based model is actually based on real-time customer demand. So can anybody tell me of those two, which is likely to be better? It actually depends on the company, but in general, if you were to choose between push-based model of supply chain or pull-based model, which one would you choose?
Pull-based.
Why would you choose that?
Because with the push-based, you might run into the issue where you might overstock and you don't have enough persons buying, whereas you know that once persons order, you'll be making your money.
Yes, you can actually both. You're more likely to overstock or understock in push-based than in pull-based, because in general, pull-based should be based on what is happening now. You see, the trick is, if you actually go back to what we said before about a thing called the Bullwhip effect, the thing is, pull-based model system can actually lead to this thing called the Bullwhip effect. But in general, it doesn't. So that's why I said, in general, the pull-based approach is generally better, because in general, there is a general pattern of, as customers, there tends to be a difference based on what's happening in the economy, what is happening in the interest in this kind of company. Like, let's say the company's product is more innovative, whatever. You can go to the next slide. So in general, pull-based is better. So let's see. So this diagram is now showing push-based versus pull-based. So with the push-based model, what is happening is, as we know, customer purchase on the shelf. There are stocks that you can come up with based on forecast of what has been happening. You're then going to say what should be the inventory for the distributor, what should be produced by the manufacturer. And so you say, what are we going to supply? That's the push-based model. With the pull-based model, the customer's order is going to lead us to say what should we actually do in terms of replenishing the warehouse, and what will we actually produce to order, and what will we actually supply to order. So it's both of them are actually database, but the second one is based on more recent data that is in the supply chain management system. So what I like, this is on the left, we should take note of, and I have a modification. So there's a slogan there: make what we sell, not sell what we make. And if you're a store that's not making anything, it is make what customers want, not sell what we believe customers want. Because really you want to sell, you want to have in stock what, instead of ordering what we want to sell, we want to sell what customers really want to buy. Yes? Next slide. So given the internet, there's a lot more complexity with the supply chain. We have not just the customers and the retailers. We have to think about the manufacturers, distributors, logistic providers, the virtual manufacturers, since there are now online goods, contract manufacturers, private industrial network suppliers. There's quite a bit of complexity in e-markets. And if you're in a firm that's involved in that, you will be looking at these kinds of things. Next slide. So why can supply chain business management systems have business value? Well, if they're well designed, they will match supply to demand. If they're well designed, what I'm saying, if they will reduce inventory levels, they can improve delivery to the customers and to the stores or the virtual stores that will sell. But if it's virtual, you would be, I shouldn't say that. You would have better speed of the product time to market. You would use assets more effectively. So by assets, we mean here financial assets and other kinds of assets. So you wouldn't have money being utilized in stocks where it could be used in other ways. You would reduce supply chain costs, and that tends to obviously lead to increased profitability. And if you do supply chain management well, it will increase sales because you will have in stores what people really want. Next slide. So the third kind of enterprise software is customer relationship management systems. And the goal is basically knowing the customer as well as possible in terms of their interaction with the firm. So the CRM captures customer data from all parts of the organization, captures in a database to analyze the data, distributes it to all parts of the enterprise that needs it. Those are called touch points. And so has a single enterprise view of each individual customer. Next slide. So typically, a customer interacts with the firm in at least 3 ways. There is the marketing, the sales, and the service, which then leads to more marketing to that customer if they're likely to buy more than one product or service. So with marketing, you have you do some kind of market survey, and then you capture some campaign data about prospective and actual customers. You figure out what the content of marketing is going to be like and analyze that data in order to then have a sales plan. So the sales will be of many different types. Could be telephone, web, sales in a retail store, and field sales, which is face to face. And then if the marketing and sales is effective, as in if you actually sell something to the customer, then you may need to do service. So some things is just a product and there's no service, but some things actually require that the customer continues to use the product and get some maintenance. So you might have a call center, some kind of website that the customer can get more information, and the like. And depending on the quality of the service, the person is more likely to be open to other marketing campaigns. So next slide. So in addition to that, there are other modules that may be installed depending on the company. So it could be that a company has a partner that they want to have a relationship management with. So we saw Nike earlier. I don't really remember if Nike is one of the sponsors of the Olympics. I read a whole article a few weeks ago about I think it was Nike, that some years ago Nike had I think it said, yeah, it doesn't really matter. I'm not sure. Does anybody know who's the sponsor of the Olympics? It's not, it tends to be only one in each area. So I don't know. Anyway, so since I just said Nike, they could have a partnership with the Olympics. But the point is, I could have a partnership with Puma. Oh, what this last year? Right. So okay, let's say Puma. So Puma could have a relationship with the Olympics, and they could also have a relationship with the Jamaican track team. So it's Puma, because I think our shirts have the Puma logo on it, as well as Puma seems to have a whole lot of the Jamaican high school athletes. All of those, they would need to know, since we're saying it's Puma, it would make sense for them to have a partnership relationship management thing where they actually figure out ways to integrate lead generation, pricing, promotions, or other configurations. And what are we talking about? Basically, I think that the reason why Puma is doing that is they're hoping that everybody who is going to, like I know that Casey, so I know because I knew a high school person who was going to Casey, so I'm not a fan of Casey. Sorry for those who went to Casey. I'm not a fan of pretty much any high school except mine, and not even that much. Yeah, but anyway, every single high school that has a partnership with Casey, what does Puma want? They want the people who are the parents and the children who are not in the track and field program to buy Puma gears. That's why they have that partnership. So the partnership is to generate more sales. So you can have, you follow me, and similar, the partnership with Olympics is to sell Puma stuff. So it's not a trivial thing to have this partner relationship management software to work out how you're going to promote these products through the partners. And then similarly, the employee relationship management, what comes to my mind is insurance companies that sell to individual clients, like life insurance or life insurance, but that's normally a one-on-one where people are pitching to you that you need to buy something, to ensure to help their dependents. And so there typically is some kind of performance-based compensation for people who, employees who that is their job. So there's a relationship between the clients and the employees. Whereas like in my job, even though there's a student evaluation, which actually is tied to promotion, but it's not as close. So it depends on the kind of nature of the job as to the importance of the employee relationship management software in the CRM. Next slide. So a CRM software typically includes tools for Salesforce automation, customer service, and marketing. So in companies where there are standard ways to do sales, the new, especially the new person who has never done any sales for that company, gets all the information, gets the information for the prospects, is able to generate quotes if it's different per customer. There's a customer service where the person who is interacting with the customer has all the information about the service request. By the way, there's a lot of noise in my background. I hope it's not disturbing you. I have on headphones, but I have no control. Somebody seems to be doing some building type of thing. Can you guys hear it?
Yes, miss.
Oh, you can.
We're hearing it, but I don't think it's that bad.
Okay, good. I'm actually literally wondering what is happening, but it just started happening since the class, so it doesn't make no sense going outside here. Anyway, and given where I am, I don't think it's even though I'm teaching university class, where I am. Yeah, because I think the people think I'm on holiday, and I'm certainly not. That's somebody else, but right. So back to this. So you can actually use the CRM for automating customer service as well as for marketing. So if you're thinking about a prospective customer, there's going to be data scheduling when you're going to meet with them in person or online, and then tracking through to see if the person is interested. If you're thinking about it, pretty much if it's a one-on-one marketing effort, it also has to be scheduled because people don't want to be bothered too frequently. So it's all about scheduling when it's good to reach back out to the customer, emailing them or contacting them in a systematic way and finding out what works. And software is actually good for figuring out these kind of patterns. Next slide. So, yes?
It is unfortunately getting extremely loud now.
It's getting extremely loud.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's really
it sounds
disturbing.
louder than it was.
Yeah, and it's disturbing.
Well, can I go into this room? Yeah, it's. I'm just going to move because the other thing is. I just stopped. I'm in a different room, but it just stopped. So it has stopped, so it must be better.
Yes, miss.
I mean, it's not, but I can't say for how long. Because it's starting again, but I'm in a different room, but this door is not very. I'm in a very small space, but I moved to a different place that has a door, hoping that it would be a little bit more muffled. Is it any better?
Nope.
It's not better. Right, so I don't. Outside a little bit to finish it class. I don't know what else to look for. People are going and coming on the top. Yeah, it's a bit low, and I don't think it's the kind of thing that if I go remember, it's not somebody talking, it's somebody doing. It's a building thing. I don't see how going outside and talk to these people is going to stop it. This is Jamaica with the beginning. You have to understand it. Sorry, let me give you a context, guys. I'm just talking just at school, guys, I've been in lecture at UTEC, go outside and say, you guys are disturbing the class, and people just start the same way. And then I go out and go on bad. And people just still, I'm like, what's this? At least when I was in the US is so not good in some ways. I literally enjoy it. The one thing I have to respect them for, two things, I read the good books in the libraries and the bookstores. I love that. I love books. And even in the universities where people are jokers, I went to one that people are serious on, people are jokers. In the university context, people literally respect the university space very seriously. They stay far from classes. Instead of just pretending, they stay in the class. They keep quiet and listen to the teacher. Even if they don't do what the teacher said, I don't see that kind of a vibe in Jamaica University. So I don't know what would I say to this man that's how if that's how the university students talk to university lecturers or ignore whatever they say somebody is doing um some work. Yeah, so back to this. We're just gonna press through and then finish class and come back later. So just doing that, hoping the man will soon finish. All right, so with us here, every single company is going to have different levels of effectiveness. So it could be that one firm would have email, web serve, email, TV, radio, etc. at different amounts of effectiveness, and the sorry, found away. Found this up here. Have we lost her? No, Thorn is still there. Thorn is stop sharing your screen. Thorn, were you talking? Oh, it's still there. I just couldn't see it. I think it's me having problems. Maybe this noise in my background is affecting me. Right. So with a CRM, you have sales, marketing, and service, which is really what we looked at before. And then you have a number of functional areas for each of those areas. Next slide. One of the things that's useful in our CRM is the customer loyalty management process map, where because you want, generally speaking, like we talked about marketing, sales, and service, what they found based on data is once you can retain a customer, you don't have to market to that customer. In fact, that customer will also market to other customers. Basically, word of mouth, tell people, oh, this is a great company, in different ways. So you want to think, how can, as a business, you plan for loyalty where possible. So you can obtain customer information, and for each customer, score that customer to figure out which ones are the ones that have the highest value, as in the ones who buy the most products that lead to the most profitability. And if the person is somebody who has the highest value, then you route that person to the best agent of all the agents in the company. Why? Because if you put the customers that are most profitable to the business, the best agents, then they're likely to be retained. And so you always want to do that so that you resolve their issues as quickly as possible. Because if you make sure you treat the best customer as well, you'll always have a business. Next slide. So in terms of CRM, just like with the supply chain management, let's think about both the operational and the analytical aspect. So the operational CRM is dealing with the application of CRM related to the customer, the sales force, and the call center, and the service, and any kind of marketing automation. The analytical CRM are for the managers who are going to know, looking to see what can we figure out about the customers so that we can improve what is called the customer lifetime value. So you're going to be looking at data analytics, data science, to see how we can essentially improve our products and services so that the customers will most likely be responding appropriately to the service and the market and the sales efforts. Next slide. So the analytical CRM, you will have in it the data warehouse that has all the channels that they getting data from, as well as external data that is from legacy systems, demographic data, marketing campaigns, etc. And all that will now be processed analytically with data mining and other data analysis tools. So you can figure out who are the most profitable customers, which market segments you actually have based on your real life data. What are the profile of the typical customers? You know, like is the typical customer, are there three types? Is there elderly male and young female and maybe mid-20s female, whatever the actual customer profiles are, and then the churn rates for each of those groups, which ones tend to disappear. So you can even have customer profiles to figure out which customers are most likely.
Excuse me, miss, I cannot hear you.
You can't hear me?
No.
Yeah, well, maybe we could just end fast because we're basically at the end of CRM. I think there's about 1 or 2 more slides, and we really have 3 more minutes. So I would say we could just pick up till next week. I don't know what else to do. I don't have any solution. You guys can't hear me.
Is it possible to get this
To get what?
this document?
I'm listening. Is it possible to do what?
Get this document.
Yeah, man, the document is on the Google site. So in my tutorial from the CRM, so everybody who's registered has access to this document. And aside from that, technically everybody in the class should be registered or be in the process of registration. So 2 things. I am like one of these really strange people that when I was in school, I bought all my textbooks. And I know that most Jamaicans don't believe in buying books and didn't budget for buying books, but I'm one of these crazy people who actually really honestly believe. I'm going to tell you what, I'm just going to tell you my belief. I can't force you to do anything. But aside from that, the slides for the class is available. I don't email slides to students. Anybody who doesn't have access to Moodle as yet, you can ask somebody else. I'm not stopping you. That's fine with me. So I recommend to people to form a WhatsApp group. So people in my tutorial has a WhatsApp group. We can have one big one for the whole class. So you need, if you're not yet registered, by the way, just remind you what UTech policy, which we're now following strictly. You need to register if you're going to do this class. If by some chance you pop up and you end up doing the class and doing the exam, we don't hold grades. So don't even bother to think about that. So make sure if you're going to the class, including the assessments. So if you're in my tutorial, please don't even bother to try that. I don't want to mark anybody who hasn't sorted out themselves with UTech. But long and the short is, the long and the short is, please get the resources, including additional resources like textbooks from other people in the class. So I see, Mr. Brian, I don't know if you wanted me to talk about your issue. No, because I see that the thing is, I see the noise has actually stopped at the moment. Yeah, I don't know. You say bumped off the module. I don't know what you mean by that. So it's just somebody has written about being bumped off the module. That's an administrative issue. You have to call admissions or the school of computing and talk about that. But I don't deal with selecting modules and adding it to classes. I know that generally speaking, it's 25 person per module occurrence, and there are 3 modular occurrences for this class this semester. It's also offered next semester as far as I know. And that's an administrative thing is just sort out with UTech, not with the tutor or the lecturer. Okay, so let's go back to, all right, next slide. Sorry, I was going to end the class, but I said the noise has disappeared for the moment. Thorin, is it there? I mean, you must be there because you're sharing screen. Yeah, you have to go through the class. I'm a name for everybody who's here. You never heard the memo. I like to refer to as Sam or Teach or Prof or Ms. Muir. Ms. which is spelled MS dot. Those are all your 4 choices, and I have zero problem with you just saying, hi, I have a question. You don't have to give me any name. That's great. And I was even share this on, even put this on YouTube. Yeah, that's me. I don't need a title, but I don't like this MISS thing. So, yes. So, given that time, actually, let's do it. Yeah. Or just restart it right when I said I'm finished. Okay, so that's just the tutorial teaching tool. Next slide. I think we're pretty much almost finished. Oh, so the business benefits. So a CRM has some benefits: increase customer satisfaction, reduce direct marketing costs, more effective marketing, low cost of customer acquisition. Why? Because if you are able to basically satisfy the customer and target the customer, then you're going to lower the cost for acquiring customers and retaining customers. And of course, if the customer is happy, then you're going to increase sales revenue. One thing that you should know the definition of is the churn rate. That's the number of customers who stop using products and services from a company. And of course, you want to reduce the churn rate to as low as possible, if not zero. So if the churn rate is low, then the customer base is likely to be growing. Next slide. There are a number of issues with enterprise applications. They can be really expensive to purchase. So in US dollars, the average cost of an enterprise resource planning system is more than 7 million. Implementation time is typically more than 17 months. Not only are they expensive, use of this technology is challenging. It involves business process changes which are normally non-trivial. Typically, the people in the organization need to learn a lot, and the people who are not open to change resist that. Not just old people, there tends to be a lot of resistance, and then there are switching costs. Because if you have different software vendors, there needs to be changes in terms of the types of data, rolling over one type of data to another. And then there are issues with data standardization, management, and cleansing. Next slide. And then there's a whole issue of what's the way forward to get study from enterprise applications is to have applications that are more flexible, revenue integrated with other systems, inclusion of standards that link to third-party software, which is not always the case right now, because businesses typically use other software that is not linked to the main enterprise applications. To have open source applications, why? Because that way firms can be easily able to make changes and to have cloud-based on-demand solutions. Right, so next generation enterprise applications include social CRM, where you use social networks to engage with customers, and business intelligence, where you're actually using the data to figure out what if scenarios, digital visualization, so you can actually improve the use that data in. Typically, when you have enterprise applications, you have big data, and that big data can be then drilled down so you can actually know a lot about the customer and then work out how to improve your business. Right, next slide. That's a whole class by itself. Next slide. And that's it. That's it. Sorry that there's so much noise, but the slides are available for anybody who wants it. Any other questions or concerns? Well, I think that is it for today then. I will see you all being well next week. And I won't be in this location, I think. No, I won't be in this location. If I were, I'm sure this won't be going on. So have a good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.